Happy highlights from episode 152. So I was talking with my sister this weekend, and she was asking me if I followed or knew about these certain influencers on Instagram that are members of the church. And she showed me their pages, she showed me their pictures, told me their names, and I honestly had never heard of any of them before. I don't follow a lot of influencers on social media. So I had no idea, and she was surprised. She said, well, they're very well known, and lots of women follow them. And she said, I'm really upset lately about some certain issues going on with them, and I want to let you know about it. Maybe you could talk about it in a video. And so I said, okay, absolutely. So my sister was trying to point out to me, she said, oh my goodness, there's just so many of these Instagram influencers that are Latter-day Saints, and they're just becoming more and more of the world, and they're starting to dress like the world and look like the world, and there's nothing distinct about them anymore. They don't really stand for anything anymore. And she says, I wouldn't normally care. That's their problem, not mine. But the thing is I see them influencing so many other women in the church. They're influencing them off the path, and it's just crazy. It's just more and more. It's like this trend, and it's just increasing. I have seen in the last 3 years so many women, stalwart members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, give up their membership and give up their garments, give up the covenants that they made because of their pride, because there was something else in this world that was more important to them. And it was all about their pride, whether it was a teaching that they stood by that went against the doctrine of the church, something they couldn't give up, they refused to give up because of their pride, whether it was something they were participating in that went against the commandments or the doctrine of the church, and again, instead of changing and repenting, they chose the mistake or the sin over their membership in the church, over their covenants. And every time I see this, I'm just dumbfounded. I don't understand it. They're willing to sacrifice it all for their pride. So here's the thoughts that I had. She talked about this certain influencer. She started out with a certain one and showed me this lady's website and blog and everything. And it had me thinking of being in the world, but not of the world. That's something that we're commanded to do. We're taught. We obviously live in this world, but we don't need to be of the world. And we're also taught to put off the natural man, to overcome those urges and desires that take us off that covenant path. As I was reading through this woman's blog, she was talking about her experiences being a member of the church. And she was saying how a lot of people always ask me, well, if you're a member of the church and you've been married in the temple, why don't you wear your garments? And so this is just one of the questions that she addresses in her article. She wrote, but garments represent commitment to the Lord, and people can make judgments about your commitment. Quoting from a comment below, she says, let's say it does. What I am saying is let people be less your version of committed than you, and can you be okay with that? They are okay with it, so can they still be a part of the church, and you just let them do that and worry about yourself? Commitment is different to everyone, and many people are happy with the level of commitment they have to the version of the God they believe in. She said, I've had my fair share of visits to the bishop, and as part of the repentance process, I was told not to take the sacrament each time. As an adult, I would never allow a bishop to tell my child they can't take the sacrament. I see no purpose or lesson learned there. I only see shame and humiliation in front of their siblings. That is one example. There are more, but basically just things I have reflected on and want to make sure my kids don't experience. And then she says, looking back, I'm not sure I was ever going to be ready for garments and what that entails. The Mormon Church's version of modesty has always been incredibly difficult for me. It just doesn't feel like me, and it never has. I always was wearing short shorts and tank tops growing up. My parents were not strict on this and always let me wear bikinis as well, which I am really grateful for, actually. I have learned that modesty is an individual thing, and garments are a private matter between the individual and God. I had made my personal decision that I would wear them except for photo shoots for the blog. And so from what I understand, from what I've read, she started out by just not wearing them for photo shoots so she could wear sexy things for her blog, for her followers. But then it got to the point where she just doesn't wear them at all now, and she doesn't see any reason to. Well, then she goes on to share a conversation she had with her herbalist. The herbalist said, "Are you married?" She said, "Yes." Herbalist says, "I noticed you aren't wearing garments." She said, "Yeah, I don't wear my garments." And the herbalist said, "But you were married in the temple, were you not? Did you not take covenants with the Lord?" She says, "Yeah, but I have decided not to wear them. I am actually very blessed and don't believe that I need to wear them to receive more blessings." Well, this Instagram influencer made it very clear. She said, "I am absolutely not responsible for anyone who decides to not wear their garments or to not go to church or whatever after reading this. The people reading this are intelligent and thoughtful humans who will read it and make informed decisions on their own." So she's saying she's aware that she's an influencer and that people follow her and respect her opinions. And she spent this whole article talking about how church isn't that important to her, and she wants to kind of participate on a casual level and just when it's convenient, and only, kind of cherry pick the principles of the gospel that she likes best, and just sort of tailoring the gospel to kind of fit her lifestyle. And she's saying that should be okay, and if that's what I want to do, that's what I want to do, but I'm not responsible for anybody reading this and wanting to do the same thing. But I beg to differ. I believe that we are responsible for the way that we influence others. It talks about that in my patriarchal blessing. It says that you're always a missionary, and there are people who will always be watching your every move. So the Lord is counting on you to be a good example of Him and His gospel and His church wherever you go and in all that you do. So we covenant to take on that responsibility in the temple, that we will represent the Lord and His church everywhere we go, and we will do all that we can to build up His kingdom. And if our actions encourage others to leave that covenant path, or to break their covenants, or take those covenants lightly, I believe we will be held accountable for that influence. How we feel about the covenants that we make with the Lord is how we feel about the Lord. It's what's written on our hearts. It's displayed in our actions and in our attitude, and the Lord knows that. So everything about the church and the restored gospel points to the temple and the greatest blessings for happiness that are found there. So we make a covenant, and with God, we're given instruction in the temple how to keep those covenants and the blessings that come with them. The temple garments are associated with protection from Satan's power. And what's his goal? Well, his goal is to take us off the covenant path and to keep us from those blessings. And so he does this by distracting us from our work and our purpose and why we are here. He wants to take us out of God's power and put us in His power. Now, in order to keep going to the temple and doing the Lord's work and building His kingdom, the most important work that we could be doing in this life, which we covenant to do, we have to have a current temple recommend. We have to be recommended by the Lord. And the questions that we're asked are all related to the covenants that we have already made with the Lord. Are we keeping them? One of those covenants that we're asked about is the temple garments. Are we wearing them? And are we wearing them properly, how we should? If we aren't being faithful to the Lord, then He can't recommend us to enter His holy house and do His holy work. So she mentions different levels of commitment, and she's right. There's a telestial level of commitment, a terrestrial level of commitment, and celestial. And she's saying that she's content with a telestial lifestyle, even after promising the Lord a celestial commitment. Not everyone desires the fullness of the blessings that God offers, but it's mostly because they don't fully understand them and they have no desire to. Keeping the covenants that we made are not an expression of our level of commitment to a church. It's an expression of our commitment to God. It's an expression of what's written in our hearts. Do we really love Him? Or do we love ourselves more? Do we really love Him? Or do we love the world more? Are we helping to build His kingdom? Or are we helping to build Babylon? This was no surprise to me because this blogger, she said that growing up, she had a rebellious heart. She did these things out of tradition. Going to the temple wasn't necessarily a personal desire, but it was more done out of tradition. Not because it was her desire to make sacred covenants. Her heart was never in it, and she never received that witness or testimony. Many people marry in the temple out of tradition, not really understanding the covenants that they're entering into and what that entails. It's just something to check off the list. The temple blessings were never in their hearts. Usually, these people don't end up going back to the temple and being reminded of those covenants. Out of sight, out of mind. If we're not hearing it and seeing it all the time, we forget about it. We don't see the value in it anymore. And if we aren't keeping our covenants, we cannot be recommended by the Lord, and we cannot go into the temple. With no recommend, there are no garments, because as you know, you can't purchase garments without a temple recommend. A celestial commitment equals a temple recommend. A telestial commitment equals telestial blessings, which means not recommended and no garments, or shield of protection. People are upset because she's a social media influencer. She's influencing so many women to leave the covenant path, and she's justifying why it's okay. That's what's rubbing people the wrong way. That's what's bothering my sister. But I can tell that she doesn't understand the covenants that she's made in her life by how she responds to taking the sacrament unworthily. She doesn't understand. Most of the people that I've known in my life and in my family who have left the church never made it to the temple. They never learned or understood or partook of the fullness of the gospel. They never even made it to the temple. And I have compassion for them because they didn't have a full understanding of what they were walking away from. You can't have a testimony of something that you never learned or experienced. So pride is what causes us to love ourselves more than the Lord, to love the world more than the Lord, more than building His kingdom, more than doing His work and saving His children. It's not His will be done, but our own will be done. And I've talked about this before in past videos. It's that me mentality. My will be done. What makes me happy, not what makes the Lord happy. My own plan for my own life, not the Lord's plan for the life that He gave me. My own empire that I am building, not God's kingdom, my own. My sponsors, my fans, my followers, my products, my sales, my brand, my name. It's about His name. We take upon us His name and He changes us. We covenant to represent Him, not a church, but Him. And when we walk away from our covenants, we walk away from Him. That covenant path is the path that leads to Him. Just because we're on it at one time and we made those covenants doesn't mean that we are entitled to those blessings. We cancel all of those blessings and promises when we leave the path. And the only way to get them back is to get back on that temple path. The path that leads to the temple, which leads to Him. If we leave this earth in a terrestrial state with a terrestrial commitment and a terrestrial testimony, well, we can expect terrestrial blessings. And some people are perfectly content with that. But God wants to bless us with so much more. He sees our potential and He wants us to inherit all that He has. The Lord wants us to be a part of His second coming. He wants us to be there with Him, descending down upon the earth, to be there in the morning of the first resurrection, not the afternoon of the resurrection, not at the second resurrection. He wants us to become just like Him and know that level of eternal joy. And some people don't desire that. They don't plan for that. They don't plan for eternity. They plan for right here and right now, and building up the kingdom that they can't take with them when they die. And the terrestrial kingdom, it's believed that those who belong to this glory, they shine as the glory of the moon. And these are the people who lived respectably, but were blinded by the craftiness of men, and those who are not valiant in the testimony of Jesus after having received it. So those who make covenants, right? But then later, they're not valiant. They don't keep those covenants. It's not important to them. So those who inherit this kingdom receive of the presence of the Son, but not the fullness of the Father. So it's all about their hearts. That's why this is so important. God looks upon our hearts. And if our hearts aren't right, if our hearts are puffed up in pride, then we cannot dwell where He is. So some people are content just being angels and servants unto the Lord throughout eternity, where others desire to live with our Father throughout all eternity, to be like Him. So are we becoming a prideful people with our earthly riches, our desires, the desire to please man more than pleasing God, political correctness and pleasing our fans and our followers, and for some, their sponsors, to keep that money coming in, pleasing the world, to keep their empire growing? We're rejecting His atonement and saying that we have nothing to repent of. We don't need it. We're happy with who we have chosen to be and the choices that we're making, influencing and encouraging others to do the same, molding the gospel and creating our own version of it to better satisfy and justify our own choices, forgetting how our choices affect our posterity and our ancestors who came before us, because they're counting on us to do their work. That's why we came to the earth at this time. We have forgotten our true identity and why we were sent to the earth at this time. We have dismissed God's will for us, and we're carrying out our own will. We are firm in our pride, so God is chastening us because He loves us. President Kimball, something he said back in 1979. He said, "Much of the major growth that is coming to the church in the last days will come because many of the good women of the world will be drawn to the church in large numbers. This will happen to the degree that the women of the church reflect righteousness and articulateness in their lives, and to the degree that the women of the church are seen as distinct and different in happy ways," and I circled that, "from the women of the world. Among the real heroines in the world who will come into the church are women who are more concerned with being righteous than with being selfish. These real heroines have true humility." There's the key word I'm focusing on in today's video message. Humility. There it was. Which places a higher value on integrity than on visibility. If we blend in with the world and we have the same standards and values of the world, and we look like the world, well, then there's nothing unique or different about us, nothing that will draw other people to the Lord. I'm reminded of some mainstream artists who have won several Grammys over the years and have recently been writing music about how they're Christian. And, this was never present in their past music or all throughout their music career. They've been very much the opposite of Christianity in their lyrics, in their lifestyle, and, now they're saying that they've turned to Christ and they want that to reflect in their music, but they're not offering anything different from the world in their music. I watched some of these videos the other day and I was listening to some of these songs, and in their music, they're using foul language. They're using the F word over and over so casually, and they're singing about drugs, and they're showing sexual images in their videos, and there's nothing about the videos that tells people, look, if you follow Christ, you can have a different life, you can change, you can be something better, be something different. Their videos and their music show nothing different than what the world is offering, and I think that sends a confusing message to people. What are Christians really about? They're no different than the rest of us. They're no different than Babylon, right? So I noticed that. There's this trend, not just within the church, but all through Christianity. There's lots of influencers who are making a lot of money, have lots of fans and followers, and a lot of them have their own companies and products, like this influencer that I've been talking about in the video. She has her own products and her own company, and they're very much focused on that. But they are influencing a lot of people who follow them, and they're using the name of Christ. They're saying, I'm a Christian, or I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's something they want people to know, but yet they're not following that. they're not. They haven't changed their lives. They haven't given their lives fully to the Lord. They're blinded by the craftiness of men, and a lot of times they are crafty in what they're telling the world. They want a foot in both worlds. They want a foot in Babylon, but they also want a foot in the Lord's kingdom. But you can't serve two masters, and so you see them kind of struggling back and forth. I've noticed with a lot of these artists, music artists, and even some actors and actresses, I've noticed that they tend to have a lot of issues. They tend to struggle and have a lot of problems in their life and go through a lot of confusion and depression, and I think that's because they're trying to serve two masters. They want to be relevant and trendy and popular and cool and all of that. They want to have the followers and the fans and make the money, but at the same time they want to serve the Lord, but they find that they can't do both. It's very difficult to do both, and so I think it causes a lot of turmoil emotionally and mentally, and it causes a lot of people, I think, to turn to other sources for comfort and security. And unfortunately, a lot of people look up to that and follow these people and value their decisions and choices and opinions, and they want to be like them, and so they become like them. And so it just had me thinking how the adversary uses women to do his work in these last days, just like the Lord uses the good women of the church to do his work in the last days. So Satan is no different. We aren't always going to fit in with the world, but being different in positive ways can be a lifeline to others who are struggling. That's exactly what I was talking about, exactly what I had been pondering. Keeping our covenant and staying on that covenant path and doing whatever it takes to be able to go to the temple and keep going to the temple and build up the kingdom, even if it means sacrificing everything, putting God's will above our own, even when we don't understand or we don't agree with the Lord. There's power in that. I see a lot of women right now who are angry about their covenants and are letting go of their covenants or sort of trampling on them and making light or mocking those covenants or saying that they're taking a break right now, right, from their covenants. But it's only when we're actively keeping our covenants and honoring those covenants that we have access to that priesthood power, to that inspiration and divine revelation that we need so much right now. That's essential to our role in building up the kingdom of God right now. If you would like to see this full video, click on the link below in the video description. And if you'd like to be notified for all future videos and topics, click on the red subscribe button underneath this video.